The great ship, the Starlight Weaver, hung in the dark silence of space. It was a ship of the Galactic Concordance, a union of many advanced species. It was smooth and elegant, its surface shining like a pearl. It was a place of quiet talk and calm work. But now, a feeling of fear filled its halls. On the main command bridge, Commander Lee Jun stood very still. He was a tall man with a serious face. On the large screen in front of him, space itself was sick. They called it a quantum knot. It was a swirling, twisting mess of colors that hurt the eyes. It did not follow the normal rules of the universe. It was slowly eating the space around it, turning everything into nothing, into a cold, dead stillness. The head scientist of the Concordance, a being named Ilix, stood next to June. Ilix was thin and graceful, with long fingers that moved through the air, controlling the data screens. Ilix's large, dark eyes were full of sadness. "The calculations are final, Commander," Ilix said, their voice soft and musical, but without any hope. "The knot is creating entropy. It is the end of all order, all energy. It is like a hole in the universe that cannot be closed. The energy required to stop it. It is more than a star. It is impossible. This sector of space is already dead. We can only build a quarantine wall and leave it to die." June felt a heavy weight in his chest. He was a soldier. His job was to protect, to find solutions. But you cannot fight an idea made real. You cannot shoot at a law of physics. "Are you certain there is no other way? No technology, no theory?" June asked, though he already knew the answer. Ilix shook their head slowly. "Certain. This is not a problem to be solved. It is a fate to be accepted. The universe creates these errors sometimes. We must be wise enough to let them go." Just then, a junior officer spoke up. "Commander, a ship is approaching. It is the human vessel, Indomitable Spirit. They are requesting permission to come closer." June sighed quietly.
Humans.
They were the newest members of the Concordance. They were not the most advanced or the most graceful or the most peaceful. But they were, without question, the most unpredictable. Their ships were not smooth and beautiful. They were blocky and practical, covered in metal plates and antennae, looking like a tool that had been used hard. The Indomitable Spirit was no different. It looked like a flying brick. Still, June had respect for their captain, Kim Minji. She was direct and brave, even if her methods were often strange. "Put her on the main screen," he said. The image of the quantum knot was replaced by the face of Captain Kim Minji. She had sharp, intelligent eyes and black hair tied back simply. She was not on her bridge, but in what looked like a workshop with tools and wiring on a table behind her. She smiled, a quick, confident flash of white teeth. "Commander June," she said, her voice clear and steady. "We've been listening to your broadcast channel. That's a nasty little problem you've found there." June raised an eyebrow. "Nasty is one word for it, Captain. Our scientists have declared it a terminal phenomenon." "Right, terminal. Heard that part," Minji said, nodding. She leaned closer to her screen. "Look, our sensors are a bit different from yours. We built them to find rocks to mine and pockets of gas. Crude, but tough. Mind if we take a quick, closer look? We won't get in your way." On the Starlight Weaver, Ilix made a quiet sound of disapproval. "Captain Kim, that is most unwise. The gravitational and quantum forces at the edge of the knot are immense. Your ship would be torn apart." Minji's smile didn't fade. "We're pretty hard to tear apart, Scientist Ilix. We'll be careful. Just a quick peek. I've got my best engineer on it." June thought for a moment. What was the harm? The humans would scan it, see the impossibility for themselves, and leave. It would satisfy their famous, and sometimes annoying, curiosity. "Very well, Captain. You have permission for a close-range scan. But please, stay at the absolute minimum safe distance." "You have my word, Commander." Indomitable Spirit out. The screen went back to the view of the beautiful, deadly knot. Ilix turned to June. "This is a waste of time, and a risk. They do not understand what they are dealing with." "Perhaps," June said. "But sometimes a new perspective can see what we cannot." They watched as the blocky human ship moved forward. It was slow and careful, just as Minji had promised. It moved toward the edge of the colorful storm. A small door opened on its side, and a single, simple probe shot out. It was a basic design, a metal ball with a few antennae. The probe flew straight towards the quantum knot. For a second, it transmitted data. Then, the screen filled with static. The little probe was not just destroyed. It was unmade. One moment it was a solid thing, the next it was a cloud of particles, and then it was nothing at all. It was erased from existence. On the bridge of the Starlight Weaver, the scientists gasped. It was a perfect, terrible demonstration of Ilix's point. Back on the Indomitable Spirit, in the noisy, brightly lit workshop she called her office, Kim Minji watched the same event. She whistled low. "Okay, so it doesn't like visitors." Standing next to her was Park Chul, her head engineer. He was a man with strong hands and a smudge of grease on his cheek. He was looking at his own data screen, his brow furrowed in thought, not fear. See that flash just before it went? Chul said, pointing at a line of numbers on his screen. It didn't just eat the probe. It reacted to it. There was a little vibration. A wobble. A wobble? Minji asked. Yeah. Chul said, his eyes lighting up, like when you tap a glass and it sings. This thing. It's not a solid wall. It's a pattern. A messy, crazy, universe-killing pattern, but still a pattern. And every pattern has a weak spot. You think we can hit the weak spot? Minji said, her voice dropping to a serious tone. I don't think we can shoot it or push it, Chul replied, scratching his head. It would just eat the energy. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. But, he paused, thinking hard. But what if we didn't fight the chaos? What if we just gave it one big, solid shake? A jolt. Something real. Something physical. Minji looked from Chul's excited face to the screen showing the beautiful, deadly knot. She then looked at the sad, hopeless faces of the Concordance crew on the other channel. They had given up. To them, it was over. She made a decision. She opened the channel to the Starlight Weaver again. Commander June's worried face appeared. Captain Kim, you see now? It is hopeless. Maybe not, Commander, Minji said, her voice calm and firm. We have an idea. It's a bit unorthodox, but we think it might work. June looked surprised. An idea? What is your plan? Minji grinned. It's a little hard to explain. It's more of an engineer's solution. So, I'm going to hand over control to my head engineer, Park Chul. He's the one with the touch for this kind of thing. She turned away from her screen, picking up a small metal can from her desk. She held it out to Chul. Chul, she said, her voice clear and loud. Hold my beer. On the bridge of the Starlight Weaver, the universal translator worked instantly. But as the words were spoken, a sound they had never heard before echoed through the ship. It was a loud, blaring alarm. The main screen flashed with bright red words. Threat level. MAXIMUMCLSS 10 reality deviation event detected. Source. Terran vessel Indomitable Spirit. Key phrase identified. Hold my beer. Commander June stared at the screen, his blood running cold. He looked from the terrifying warning back to the view screen, where the human engineer was now taking the captain's drink with a confident nod. He had no idea what was about to happen. He only knew that the galaxy itself had just told him to be afraid. Very, very afraid. The scream of the alarm was the loudest sound Lee Jun had ever heard on the quiet bridge of the Starlight Weaver. The peaceful blue lights were gone, replaced by a frantic, pulsing red. The words on the main screen burned into his eyes. Maximum threat level. For a moment, no one moved. They were all frozen, staring at the warning that their own ship's smart systems had created. Scientist Ilix was the first to break the silence. Their musical voice was now sharp with panic. What is happening? What does this mean? Reality deviation event? June found his voice, though it was tight. The translation system, it has a threat library. It learns from all member species. It must have learned that human phrase is a precursor to extreme action. He turned to his communication officer. Get me Captain Kim. Now. On the screen, the view of the human ship changed. Kim Minji was gone. In her place was the engineer, Park Chul. He had taken the metal can from his captain and placed it carefully on a table. He did not look like a person causing a galactic emergency. He looked like a man getting ready to fix a broken machine. He had a small, focused smile on his face. Commander June? Chul said, his voice calm and friendly. Captain Kim tells me you're ready for our solution. Solution? June almost shouted. Engineer Park, my ship has just declared a maximum threat alert because of you. What are you planning to do? Chul looked slightly confused, glancing at the red alert reflected on his own screens. Oh, that happens sometimes. Don't worry about it. It's just the computer being a little dramatic. Now, about that knot. He turned away from the screen and started typing on a console. Sumin. Hannah, you heard the lady. It's go time. Initiate the Dakota Protocol. June felt a cold dread. The Dakota Protocol? What is that? On the Indomitable Spirit, things began to happen very fast. The blocky ship, which had been sitting quietly, suddenly came alive with new energy. Panels on its sides slid open. Thrusters fired, not to move the ship away, but to turn it. It was slowly rotating, pointing its heavily armored underbelly towards the quantum knot. At a new voice, a woman's, came over the open channel. Chul, this is Sumin. The Concordance is hailing us. They are screaming, actually. They are asking if we are insane. Chul chuckled. Tell them we're perfectly sane. We just have a different definition of safe. Now, reroute all non-essential power to the forward structural integrity field. And I mean all of it. Shut down the dampeners for the artificial gravity. Shut down the main life support to all non-critical areas. Put it all into the shields. On the Starlight Weaver, the science team listened in horror. They are turning off their life support? One of them whispered. To power their shields? Ilix turned to June, their large eyes wide with disbelief. Commander, they are not planning to scan it. They are planning to ram it. They are going to fly their ship directly into the anomaly. It is a suicide mission. June's heart hammered against his ribs. He opened the channel again. Park Chul, you must stop. You cannot impact the knot. It will not destroy the knot. It will only destroy you. You will be erased, just like the probe. Chul's face came back on the screen. He looked a little annoyed at the interruption. We're not going to ram it, Commander. Well, not exactly. It's more of a tactical nudge. A really, really big one. A nudge, June repeated, feeling like he was going mad. Yeah, Chul said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You can't fight energy with more energy. That thing eats energy. But it might not know what to do with several thousand tons of solid metal moving very, very fast. We're going to give it a poke in its weak spot. Another voice, calm and steady, came from the human ship. It was the pilot, Lee Hanna. Chul, I have the trajectory. Pattern Delta 7. It's a decaying orbit. We will swing around once and then make our approach. The stress on the hull will be significant. Understood, Hanna, Chul said. Just hold her together as long as you can. June could only watch as the human ship continued its slow, deliberate turn. It was like watching a large, clumsy animal prepare to charge a tornado. It was the most foolish, bravest, and most terrifying thing he had ever seen. Why are they doing this? Ilix asked, their voice soft with confusion. They know it is death. Why would they throw their lives away for a section of empty space? June thought about the humans he had met. They were not graceful like Ilix's people. They were not logical like many of the concordant species. They were stubborn. They saw a mountain and felt they had to climb it. They saw a wall and felt they had to break it. They saw an impossible problem and refused to accept that it was impossible. They are not doing it for the space, Ilix, June said quietly. They are doing it because it is there, because someone told them it could not be done. On the screen, Park Chul was giving final orders. Sumin, I want you to fire the seismic charges. Not at the knot. Fire them in a circle around its perimeter. I want to see how it reacts to a little noise. Seismic charges? June asked, bewildered. Those are for breaking apart asteroids. Exactly, Chul said with a grin. Big shockwaves. Good, honest, physical force. From the sides of the indomitable spirit, a series of canisters shot out. They flew in a wide circle around the edge of the quantum knot. They did not fly into the colorful storm. They stopped, hovering in space. Then, they all exploded at once. But it was not a fiery explosion. It was a silent, powerful pulse of pure force. A ring of invisible energy slammed into the space around the knot. And the knot reacted. It did not swallow the energy. The colorful swirls shuddered. For a brief second, the beautiful, deadly patterns twisted and vibrated, like a disturbed pond. The sensors on the Starlight Weaver went wild. Reading a localized harmonic instability, one of the concordant scientists yelled, their voice filled with shock. The anomaly, it resonated. It reacted to the physical force. Ilix stared at the data, their minds struggling to catch up. Their entire life's understanding of physics said this should not happen. You could not punch a hole in reality. But the humans were not trying to punch the hole. They were trying to punch the space next to the hole to make it wobble. And it was working. They found a flaw, Ilix whispered, a sense of awe cutting through their fear. A flaw in a perfect, universal ending. They are not trying to solve the equation. They are trying to break it. On the human ship, Park Chul saw the same data and laughed. There. You see? It's just a big, cosmic squeaky wheel. And we've got the grease. He turned to his pilot. Hanna, take us in. Nice and easy. Sumin, get ready on the final impact charges. We're only going to get one shot at this. The indomitable spirit began to move. It was not a fast, reckless charge. It was a controlled, deliberate fall. The ship, now glowing with the immense power of its own shields, started its long, slow arc towards the heart of the quantum knot. Lee Jun watched, his hands clenched into fists. The maximum threat alert was still blaring, the red lights still flashing. But now he understood. The alert was not because the humans were a danger to the galaxy. It was because they were a danger to the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. They were about to do something that the smartest minds in the concordance had declared impossible. And they were going to do it with the simplest, most brutal tool imaginable. A very, very big hammer. The bridge of the Starlight Weaver was a tomb of silent dread. The red alarm lights still flashed, but no one made a sound. They were all prisoners, forced to watch the screen. They saw the indomitable spirit, a block of metal against a storm of colors, begin its slow fall towards the quantum knot. Li Jun could not move. He was the commander, but there was no command to give. He could not order them to stop. He could not help them. He could only watch. He saw the human ship, with all its power focused on its front shields, looking like a man holding up a single piece of wood to stop a tidal wave. Scientist Ilix stood beside him, their slender body trembling. They are not just committing suicide, Ilix whispered, their voice full of a new, terrible understanding. They are testing a hypothesis. They are using their own ship, their own lives as the final experiment. On the screen, the view from the human ship was shaky. The pilot, Lee Hanna, was fighting the controls. The ship was being pulled and pushed by the strange forces at the edge of the knot. The noise was tremendous. It was the sound of metal groaning under stress, of shields screaming as they were pushed far beyond their limits. Inside the indomitable spirit, the air was thick with tension and the smell of hot electronics. The lights flickered. Warning messages flashed on every screen. The artificial gravity was off, making things float and then slam down as the ship shook. Park Chul was strapped into his chair, his eyes fixed on his data screen. His hands moved quickly, adjusting power levels, trying to keep the ship from tearing itself apart. Hannah, how are we doing? He asked, his voice calm but loud over the noise. Lee Hanna's voice was tight with effort. It's like flying through glue, a very angry, universe-eating glue. The controls are sluggish. The starboard thruster array is down to 40% power. Understood. Just keep us on the line, Hannah. You're doing great. Chul then switched to another channel. Sumin, status on the impact charges? The voice of Choi Sumin, the weapon specialist, came back, sharp and clear. Charges are armed and ready. I have the sequence loaded. But Chul, the window is going to be tiny. If we're off by a half second, we'll just make it angrier. We won't be off, Chul said, with a confidence he did not entirely feel. Trust Hannah's flying. Back on the Starlight Weaver, the science team was frantically studying the new data. Commander, one of them said, their voice shaking with excitement. The anomaly's energy signature is changing. The humans approach. It is causing a reaction. It is not ignoring them. Ilix leaned over the console, their long fingers tracing the lines of data. It sees them. The knot perceives the ship not as energy, but as a physical object. A foreign body. It is trying to digest it, but the ship's shields are too strong. It is creating a pressure wave ahead of the ship. June watched, his mind struggling to understand. The humans were not just crashing. They were performing a delicate, deadly dance. They were using their ship as a tool, a scalpel, to perform surgery on a cancer in space. The indomitable spirit was closer now. The beautiful colors on the view screen were not beautiful anymore. They were violent and hungry. Tendrils of distorted light reached out, slapping against the ship's shields, making the whole vessel shudder. Shield integrity at 60%, Hannah reported. The stress is incredible. I don't know how much longer the hull can take this. Just a little further, Chul urged. We're almost in position. Sumin, get ready. On the Starlight Weaver, June found he was holding his breath. He saw a small, flashing dot on the main screen, representing the human ship. It was moving along a curved line, a path that would take it skimming the surface of the anomaly, not into its heart. He is not aiming for the center, Ilix said, their voice full of wonder. He is aiming for the instability we saw, the resonant frequency. He is going to strike it like a gong. It was madness. It was like trying to stop a hurricane by tapping a specific raindrop. The noise from the human ship's channel was now a constant, deafening roar. Alarms blared in the background. A new voice, Captain Kim Minji, came over the speaker. She was not on the bridge. She was somewhere else in the ship. Her voice was calm. Chul, the coolant lines on Deck 3 have burst. We're losing pressure. Acknowledged, Captain, Chul said, his hands flying over his console. Rerouting. It's fine. We don't need Deck 3 for the next 5 minutes anyway. June could not believe what he was hearing. Their ship was breaking apart around them, and they were talking about it as if it were a minor problem with a ground vehicle. The indomitable spirit was now so close to the knot that the view screen was filled with nothing but the swirling chaos. The ship was vibrating so hard the image was a blur. Now, Hannah! Hard to port. Now! Chul yelled dot on the screen. The human ship swung violently to the left. It was a brutal, jarring maneuver. The sound of tearing metal screeched over the comms. For a terrible second, June thought the ship had been ripped in half. But it held. The ship, battered and screaming, was now flying sideways, its armored belly facing the very edge of the quantum knot. Sumin, fire charges 1 through 4. Now! Chul commanded. From the underside of the indomitable spirit, 4 canisters shot out. They flew a very short distance and then exploded. But these were not like the seismic charges from before. These were compact, focused explosions. They were like 4 giant fists, punching the same spot on the surface of the anomaly at the exact same moment. The effect was immediate and shocking. The quantum knot did not absorb the blast. The spot where the charges hit flashed a brilliant, painful white. Then, a crack appeared. A real, physical-looking crack in the fabric of reality. From that crack, a wave of pure white energy erupted, slamming into the side of the human ship. The indomitable spirit was thrown away from the knot like a toy. It tumbled end over end, its lights flickering wildly on the Starlight Weaver. Every sensor screen went completely white. A wave of energy, clean and stable, washed over their ship. It was not destructive. It felt like a warm, gentle wind. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. The main screen cleared. The beautiful, deadly quantum knot was gone. Vanished. In its place was a calm, glowing cloud of sparkling dust. A new, harmless nebula. The red alarm lights on the Starlight Weaver shut off. The blaring siren stopped. The bridge was plunged into a silence that was even more profound than before. June stared at the screen. He looked at the peaceful nebula. He looked at the small, drifting dot that was the indomitable spirit. It was impossible. They had done it. They had broken the unbreakable. They had fixed the unfixable. He slowly opened a channel. His voice was a hoarse whisper. Indomitable spirit? Do you read me? There was a long silence. Then, a burst of static. A voice. It was Park Chul coughing. Yeah. We read you, Starlight Weaver. A little banged up over here, but we're in one piece. He paused, and then he added, Told you it would work. The silence on the bridge of the Starlight Weaver was heavy and full of shock. It was the silence of people who had just seen a miracle they could not understand. Commander Lee Jun stared at the main screen. The beautiful, deadly storm of the quantum knot was gone. In its place was a cloud of gentle, glowing dust. It was peaceful. It was impossible. The human ship, the indomitable spirit, drifted at the edge of the new nebula. It was a broken thing. Its hull was scorched black. Parts of it were bent out of shape. One of its thrusters was dark and silent, but its lights were still on. It was alive. June found his voice. It was rough. Life signs scan. Now. An officer tapped at his console. Reading multiple life signs on the human vessel, Commander. All are present. They are alive. A wave of relief so strong it made him dizzy washed over June. He had been sure they were watching a suicide. He opened the communication channel again. Captain Kim? Park Chul? Can you hear me? What is your status? There was a burst of static, then a voice. It was Kim Minji. She sounded tired, but calm. We hear you, Commander. Status is... Well, we've had better days. We've lost main power. Life support is on backups. Hull breaches on 3 decks. But the emergency doors sealed them. No one is dead. A lot of people are bruised. On the Starlight Weaver, the science team was in a frenzy of activity. They were pointing at their screens, talking in fast, excited voices. Scientist Ilix stood in the middle of it all, not moving. They stared at the data, their face a mask of confusion and awe. It is gone, Ilix whispered. The entropy field has collapsed. The space is stable. The laws of physics are normal again. They looked at June, their large eyes wide. They did not just destroy it. They transformed it. They turned a weapon of nothing into a nursery for new stars. The energy released was creative, not destructive. How is this possible? June had no answer. He was a soldier, not a scientist. He looked at the broken human ship. Your theory, Scientist Ilix. You said it was a perfect, terminal problem. Ilix nodded slowly. It was. By every law we know, the humans, they did not use our laws. They used a different kind of logic. The logic of a hammer. On the indomitable spirit, the crew was assessing the damage. The lights were dim and red. Emergency alarms beeped softly. Park Chul unstrapped himself from his chair and floated in the zero gravity. He grabbed a tool and started working on a sparking console. Lee Hannah, the pilot, was still in her seat, her hands gently moving over the dead controls. The main engine is gone, she said quietly. We are floating. Choi Soo-min climbed down from her weapons station. The primary reactor is offline. It shut down to prevent a meltdown when we took that energy wave. We have battery power for a few hours. Captain Kim Minji pulled herself through a doorway, holding onto a handle. She looked around her broken bridge. She saw her crew, tired and dirty, but already starting to fix things. A slow smile spread across her face. We did it, she said. You all did it. Chul looked up from his work, a smudge of grease now on his forehead. Told you it would work. A big enough jolt in the right spot. He pointed his tool at the view screen, which showed the peaceful nebula. See? It just needed a little push. Minji nodded. It did. She looked at the communication panel. June? You still there? We are here, Captain. June's voice came back instantly. We are preparing to send over emergency supplies, medical teams, tow cables. We will get you to a safe port. Thank you, Commander, Minji said. We appreciate that. She paused. So, about that maximum threat level alert? On the Starlight Weaver, June almost laughed. It was a strange, relieved sound. The alert has ended, Captain. The galaxy appears to be safe from your beer-holding activities. For now. Back on the human ship, Chul grinned. See? No problem. The Concordant science team was not listening to the talk. They were completely focused on the data. They were like people who had been told their entire lives that water was dry and had just been thrown into an ocean. They were struggling to swim in this new understanding. Ilix moved to the main communication console. Engineer Park, they said, their voice full of a new respect. Your method. It should not have worked. The energy required to collapse the knot was immense. Your ship did not have that energy. How did you do it? Chul stopped his work and floated towards the comms. It's like, okay, imagine a really tall tower of blocks. It's perfectly balanced. It looks super strong. But if you tap one specific block at the bottom, the whole thing falls down. You don't need to push over the whole tower. You just need to find the right block to tap. Ilix was silent for a moment, processing this. You found the flaw in a perfect structure. Nothing's perfect, Chul said with a shrug. Everything has a flaw. You just have to look at it the right way. You guys were looking at it like a math problem. We looked at it like a broken engine. Sometimes you don't need a computer. You just need a big wrench. On the Starlight Weaver, the scientists gathered around Ilix, listening to the simple explanation. They looked at each other, their faces showing a mix of insult and amazement. The most complex problem they had ever faced was solved not with grand theories, but with the principle of a big wrench. June looked at the two ships on his screen, the elegant, perfect Starlight Weaver, and the battered, broken, but triumphant indomitable spirit. He understood now. The humans were not reckless because they were foolish. They were reckless because they saw the universe in a simpler, more direct way. They saw problems as things to be broken, fixed, or pushed aside, and that made them the most dangerous and most valuable species in the entire galaxy. Captain Kim, June said, your ship is the most magnificent mess I have ever seen. We are coming to get you. Please try not to fix anything else until we arrive. Minji's laugh came through the speaker, clear and strong. No promises, Commander. No promises at all. The Starlight Weaver moved carefully towards the wounded, indomitable spirit. It was like a graceful swan approaching a battle-scarred bulldog. Tractor beams, glowing lines of gentle light, reached out from the Concordance ship and took hold of the human vessel. The pull was slow and steady, guiding the broken ship away from the beautiful nebula it had created. Inside the human ship, the crew felt the gentle tug. The drifting stopped. They were safe. Park Chul floated near a broken wall panel, a tool in his hand. Well, that's a nice feeling. No more floating aimlessly into the dark. Lee Hannah unstrapped from her pilot's chair and stretched her arms. The tension of the flight was finally leaving her body. I have never been so happy to be towed, she said, a small smile on her face. Choi Soo-min was already on the move, a medical kit in her hand. She moved through the dim, red-lit corridors to check on the crew in other parts of the ship. There were bumps and bruises, and a few broken bones from the violent shaking, but no one was critically injured. The mood was not one of fear, but of tired triumph. They had done the impossible, and they had lived. On the bridge of the Starlight Weaver, the mood was very different. It was a quiet chaos of thought. The scientists were gathered around their screens, talking in low, intense voices. They were replaying the data from the human ship's attack. They were studying the moment the quantum knot shattered. Scientist Ilix stood a little apart from the others. They were watching the main screen, which showed the damaged hull of the human ship. Their mind, which was built on logic and known laws, was struggling. The humans had not used a new energy source. They had not used a secret technology. They had used force. Simple, physical force. It was so primitive. It was so brilliant. Commander June was organizing the rescue effort. Prepare the main docking bay. Have medical teams and engineers ready. They will need food, water, and spare parts. He looked at the image of the human ship and find out what kind of drink they prefer. I think we owe them that much. Soon, a connection was made between the two ships. A flexible tunnel, called an umbilical, locked onto a hatch on the indomitable spirit. The air pressure equalized. The door on the human ship opened with a hiss. The first to step onto the Starlight Weaver was Captain Kim Minji. She looked tired. Her clothes were stained with grease and sweat, but she stood straight and her eyes were clear. Behind her came Park Chul, Lee Hannah, and Choi Soo-min. They stepped from their world of gritty metal and emergency lights into a world of soft, white light and smooth, clean floors. The air smelled clean and fresh. The Concordance crew who stood to greet them were all dressed in neat, colorful uniforms. They looked like they had just stepped out of a painting. For a moment, the two groups just looked at each other. They were from different worlds in every way. Then, Commander June stepped forward. He did not bow in the formal Concordance way. Instead, he put his right hand over his heart, a human gesture he had learned. Captain Kim, on behalf of the Galactic Concordance and on my own behalf, thank you. You saved this sector of space. You did what we believed was impossible. Minji gave a small, respectful nod. Thank you, Commander. But it wasn't just me. It was my crew. They are the ones who built the plan and flew the ship. June looked at the three people behind her. He looked at Park Chul, who was looking around the clean bay with a curious expression, probably figuring out how everything worked. He looked at Lee Hannah, whose calm eyes hid the incredible skill it took to pilot a dying ship. He looked at Choi Soo-min, who stood ready, as if expecting another problem to solve at any moment. You have an extraordinary crew, June said. He then gestured to a table where drinks and food had been set out. There were elegant glasses of water and juices, and right in the middle, sitting a little awkwardly, was a case of simple, canned human beer. Chul saw it and his face broke into a wide grin. Now that's what I call first-class service. As the humans took drinks and sat down, the Concordant scientists slowly gathered around. They were hesitant, like students approaching a famous teacher. Scientist Ilix was the one who finally spoke. Engineer Park. They began, their voice respectful. We have analyzed the data. We understand the principle of striking a resonant frequency. But the timing, the precision required, it was beyond any calculation our computers could make in the time you had. How did you know when to strike? Chul took a sip from his can. Well, it wasn't just a computer thing. Hannah was flying by feel. She saw the way the colors were swirling right before we hit. She felt the pull on the ship. She just knew. All eyes turned to Lee Hannah. She looked a little uncomfortable with the attention. It is like riding a bicycle on a bumpy road, she said softly. You do not calculate every bump. You feel them. You adjust without thinking. I saw the pattern in the knot. I felt the right moment in the controls. The scientists looked at each other. They understood the words, but the concept was foreign. They relied on sensors and computers to tell them everything. The idea of trusting a feeling to navigate a universe-ending anomaly was terrifying. And amazing. Another scientist asked Choi Soo-min, and the charges? Their placement was perfect to create a single, focused shockwave. The mathematics for that are incredibly complex. Soo-min shook her head. I did not do the math. I set the charges in a diamond pattern. I have done it 100 times to break apart big asteroids. It works. I just made the explosions bigger. The scientists were silent. They were being taught the most important lesson of their lives by people who used words like feel and bigger. The humans had replaced complex science with experience and instinct, and it had worked better than all their theories. Commander June watched the exchange. He saw the awe on the faces of his scientists. He saw the simple confidence of the humans. The galaxy had just become a much bigger and much stranger place. He walked over to Kim Minji, who was watching her crew with a proud smile. Captain, June said quietly, what you did, it changes everything. Minji looked at him. It doesn't have to change anything, Commander. It just means that sometimes, when you have a problem that looks too smart to fix, you might need to call a few people who are good with their hands. The humans spent 3 days on the Starlight Weaver while their ship was made safe for travel. It was a strange time. The Concordance crew treated them like heroes, but also like they were dangerous animals that might suddenly break something. The scientists followed Park Chul everywhere, asking questions. Chul tried to explain things in his simple way. He talked about leverage and pressure points and percussive maintenance. The scientists wrote everything down, trying to turn his simple ideas into complex equations. They never quite managed it. Finally, the indomitable spirit was ready. It would not fly under its own power, but it was sealed and stable. A large Concordance tugship would pull it all the way back to a human space dock for repairs. It was time to say goodbye. Captain Kim Minji and her crew stood once more in the clean, bright docking bay of the Starlight Weaver. Commander June and Scientist Ilix were there to see them off. The galaxy owes you a great debt, June said formally. Your actions here will be recorded in our histories. Just make sure you get the story right, Minji said with a smile. Especially the part where Chul said it would work. Ilix stepped forward. They held out a small data crystal. Engineer Park, this is a record of our findings on the quantum knot, both before and after your intervention. We thought you might like to have it. Chul took the crystal. It was smooth and cool. Thanks. I'll take a look. He put it in his pocket. The scientists had given him thousands of years of advanced knowledge, and he treated it like a receipt. There were final handshakes and nods. Then the human crew turned and walked back through the umbilical tunnel into their own ship. The door closed behind them with a solid thud. On the bridge of the Starlight Weaver, June and Ilix watched the viewscreen. The tugship activated its powerful tractors, and slowly, the battered, blocky form of the indomitable spirit began to move away, heading for home. Ilix was quiet for a long time. Finally, they spoke. "They are gone." "Yes," June said. "They have changed the universe, Commander. Not by destroying the anomaly, but by changing how we see it." Ilix turned to June. "For my entire life, I was taught that the universe runs on rules. Complex, beautiful, unbreakable rules. The humans, they see rules as suggestions. They see a wall and their first thought is not to go around it, but to see if they can break a hole in it." June nodded. He was thinking about the maximum threat alert. The galaxy was right to be afraid, but not for the reason we thought. They are not a threat to us. They are a threat to impossibility itself. Meanwhile, on the indomitable spirit, the mood was light. The power was low, but the heat and air were working. The crew was together in the common room, eating simple food from their own supplies. Chul pulled the data crystal from his pocket. He looked at it for a moment, then plugged it into a small screen on the wall. Complex graphs and lines of alien text filled the display. Lee Hanna looked over his shoulder. "Can you understand any of that?" "Not really," Chul admitted. "It's all numbers and weird symbols." He scrolled down through the data. Then he stopped. He pointed at a particular section. "But look at that." It was a video recording taken from the Starlight Weaver sensors. It showed their ship making its final approach to the quantum knot. It showed the moment their impact charges went off. It showed the brilliant white crack forming. And it showed the exact, perfect alignment of their ship in that single moment. It was a thing of beauty. A perfect, violent, beautiful dance. Suman whistled. "Hannah, you really nailed it." Hannah smiled softly. "It felt right." Chul leaned back in his chair. "They can keep their numbers and their theories. They can try to turn it into an equation. But they'll never really capture it." He took a sip of his water. "Some things you just have to feel." Captain Minji looked around at her crew. They were tired. Their ship was a wreck. They had almost died. But they were happy. They had faced the impossible and they had won. "Next time," she said, "let's find a problem that's a little less universe-ending." Everyone laughed. A week later, on the Starlight Weaver, Commander June was in his office. A new report had come across his desk. It was an updated version of the Galactic Threat Assessment. He opened the file. There, listed alongside cosmic dangers like supernovas and gamma-ray bursts, was the entry for the human phrase. The heading read, "Hold my beer event." He read the description. Classification: dual nature anomaly, threat level, maximum, context dependent. Description: a prelude to action by human entities characterized by the application of radically simple, physically oriented solutions to problems of extreme complexity. Outcomes are unpredictable and range from catastrophic failure to reality-altering success. The process is not based on conventional scientific models, but on human intuition, experience, and a high tolerance for risk. Recommended action: secure all valuable objects. Move to a safe distance. Observe and record. Do not attempt to interfere. June closed the file. He looked out his window at the stars. The universe felt different now. Felt bigger, wilder, and far more interesting. He knew that somewhere out there, the crew of the indomitable spirit was getting their ship fixed. And soon they would be flying again, looking for the next wall that needed a hole punched in it. For the first time, the thought did not fill him with dread. It filled him with a strange sense of hope.